Okay, so picture this. You've got a beautiful, prestigious landmark building. You've got a tenant running a seriously illegal operation inside, and you, the landlord, have what looks like the most open and shut eviction case in history. But then, in a crazy turn of events, it all just implodes. Let's dig into the wild legal maze of this doomed eviction.
Yeah, this wasn't just any old lease violation, like a loud party or a late rent check. The media went absolutely nuts over this, calling the tenant's operation the high society vice ring. We're talking organized crime, illegal gambling, the works, all happening inside this historic property. It was a massive scandal.
You'd think with a breach this bad, eviction would be a total slam dunk, right? The tenant didn't just bend the rules, they shattered them, and yet the landlord's case completely fell apart. How? That's the big question we're going to answer today.
So, to really get what happened here, we first need to meet the key players in this high-stakes legal drama.
All right, so on one side you have the landlord, Prestige Heritage Properties, and on the other, the tenant, a company called Opulence Events. And right in the middle is the prize, a super valuable 7-year lease on this landmark building, the Gilded Cage. We're talking big money and, more importantly, reputation on the line.
Now, Prestige Properties walked into this feeling confident because they thought they had a killer legal argument, a real silver bullet. It all centered on this powerful idea of a permanent stigma.
So what in the world is an irremediable stigma? Well, it's a legal concept that says some violations are so uniquely awful, they basically poison a property's reputation forever. You can't fix it. Even if the bad stuff stops, the stain, the stigma, it sticks around.
And the damage here was huge. The landlord argued, pretty convincingly, that having their historic building forever linked to a high society vice ring caused real, lasting harm. It tanks the property's value. You can't just undo a connection to organized crime by saying, "Oops, we promised to stop." The damage was done. It was permanent.
So with a case this strong, all Prestige had to do was follow the legal playbook for eviction. Just follow the steps, and it looked like they were doing exactly that.
The process for this type of eviction, which is called forfeiture, really boils down to 3 main steps. First, prove you even have the right to take the property back. Second, you have to serve a proper, valid notice that spells out the problem. And third, you have to actually file a lawsuit to get the place back.
And here's the kicker. Prestige nailed the first 2 steps, totally nailed them. They had the right of re-entry in the lease, check, and they served a picture-perfect notice by October 28th, check. On paper, their case was flawless. They were literally inches from the finish line. But just as they were about to declare victory, they made one simple, tiny error. An error that turned out to be a true million-dollar mistake.
Which brings us right back to our central mystery. If the notice was good and the tenant's crime was so obvious, what could possibly have gone wrong?
This timeline tells the whole story. This is where it all went off the rails. They served their notices in October. Everything's going according to plan. But then look, November 1st. Before they filed the lawsuit on the 15th, they did something that seems totally harmless. They accepted the tenant's rent payments.
And that one simple act triggered a legal landmine called a waiver. A waiver is when a landlord who knows full well about a violation does something that basically says, "Hey, I see what you did, but I still consider this lease active." By doing that, you accidentally give up or waive your right to evict them for that problem.
So it's all about the timing. It's critical. See, before you make it official by filing a lawsuit, actions like accepting rent can totally sink your case. It sends the court a mixed message, like, I want to evict them, but I also want their money, so I guess the lease is still on. But once that lawsuit is filed, your decision is locked in. You've made your final choice, and the right to evict can't be waived anymore. And there it is. That's the whole ballgame. By accepting rent on November 1st, just 2 weeks before filing in court, Prestige legally told the world the lease was still ongoing. And in that one moment, they completely undid their own airtight case. They had waived their right to forfeit.
So, was that it? Game over for the landlord? Well, not quite. They lost this battle for sure because of a procedural screw-up, but they could still win the war. They just needed a whole new game plan.
So how do you fix a mess like this? The advice was pretty clear. First, you have to drop the lawsuit that just failed. Second, and this is the most important part, stop accepting rent immediately. Third, serve a brand new notice for the exact same stigma breach. And finally, start a fresh case, but this time, do it right.
Now, if Prestige follows these steps correctly, the whole situation flips on its head.
The tenant's only real option would be to go to the court and ask for relief, which is just a fancy way of asking a judge for mercy, to let them stay anyway. But for a stigma breach this bad, courts almost never, ever grant that. The damage is just too severe.
This whole case leaves you with a really fascinating question, though. You had a tenant who was clearly in the wrong and a landlord who was clearly the victim. The why of the eviction was a no-brainer, but because the how was messed up, the whole thing failed. It really makes you wonder, when the law becomes a game of procedure, does doing things the right way matter even more than being right?